I know he's coming. I can hear his thoughts. Right now, he's ignoring the sharp pinprick shooting up his ankle each time his right foot hits the ground. He drags it a little as he balances on the blade of his foot. An injury, perhaps. No, wait. Oh, I see. A dig by one of his victims. A portly woman called Tori stomped on his ankle, crushing it. His response, a fist to her mouth, sweeping her clean off her feet. The thud of her head slamming on the grass signaled her unconscious state. Bitch, he said. Grabbing her arm, he dragged her to a thicket. Concealed there, concrete steps leading to a wooden door, a scallywag bunker. The things he did to her in there. Ernie Doors is just approaching my porch. I walked through the wooden hallway accompanied by all the creaks and pings the wooden floorboards made to find a bald man in a white jacket, the type a pharmacist wears. He wore thick, square spectacles. The only noticeable thing on his 6'2" frame were his hunching shoulders. Please let me in, he said. Ernie turned and looked behind him at the blending tapestry of thick black mist rolling across the ground, ebbing and flowing. Mesmerizing. Too mesmerizing. I gestured to the lounge where the cackling of fire was heard. Ernie Doors walked straight in without another thought and disappeared behind the wall. I entered the lounge to find him sat on an armchair, hunched forward, gazing at flecks of orange and amber dancing on the wood-paned wall. I slid in, as if apparition, and appeared sat on the other armchair facing him, and crossed one leg over the other. Eyes on him, I noticed the rope marks around his neck. They were dug deep. You want to hear what happened? I watched him. Before you let me pass. His spectacles bobbed as he rubbed the edge of his left eye with his finger. Tell me about Della, I said, still peering at him. Ernie grinned, a flat smile that looked like he was tugging one off. Della. She was a good un. I liked her. I liked her a lot. Ernie's grin widened. She used to come in my pharmacy all the time, her shirt unbuttoned, showing a black bra where she'd come to the counter and pick up a prescription. I could see she wanted it. Right there. I wanted to slam her head on the counter, whack, knock her clean out. Ernie Doors looked at his hands. I had to take a grip of myself. I wanted to gut her right there and take her to my slab in the bunker. Ernie Doors' eyes dilated. I watched them. He was in a trance. Give it a day or two, she would be cool to the touch. I like it when they look asleep like that. And he licked his lips. I watched the thoughts run through his mind of everything he would do to that dead body. A tentacle of mist twisted and rolled through my front door. It came over to my left ear and tickled it. Della is coming. I stood up, snapping Ernie Doors out of his trance. The mist recoiled, gathering around the circumference of the room, slowly bulging as more drew in through the front door. I left the room, walking directly across the corridor to my waiting room, only it looked like a goth's den. Della stood there, part apparition, part matter, with a tear frozen on her cheek. Nice decor, a little specific for my taste, I said. I miss home. You understand why you're here? Della nodded and went and sat on the single bed in the corner. I left the room to find Ernie Doors still in his chair, hunched forward, hands on his knees. And then I was there. A wide street bereft of people and activity with the exception of an occasional straggler. It was past midnight and the air was crisp. Only Fontoon's takeaway, further down the street, was bright, open. A chubby man exited the shop carrying a large plastic bag bulging with food. And then I saw her. A woman in a long black jacket, unbuttoned, casually walking across the street. I followed Della. She stopped at an ATM. I stepped back into an indented entrance, still watching. She turned at the sound of a car zipping by. Her nose ring gleamed. I sensed my pulse racing. Images of colorless Della naked on a slab flashed in my mind. The clicking of a card ejected from an ATM was followed by grunting of the ATM dispensing notes. Della kept walking, my heart still pumping. I followed, slowly, sticking to the wall, watching, following like a wolf stalking its prey. She kept moving. I had to hold on, just need a bit more cover. She entered Fontoon's. Just then, a tall, wiry man, collars up, face down, strode past me and walked down an alley opposite Fontoon's. Stillness. I waited for Della to exit. She was eating chips from a paper bag. She proceeded down the alley. It was wide enough to house large industrial bins on both sides. It smelled of piss and crap. Della kept walking without a care in the world. I moved faster, sprinting. Now I was close. I could smell her scent. Grab, I dragged her to the wall. Whack, I slammed her face first into the brick, squashing it. It was gorgeous blood trickling down her cheek. Again. More gorgeous blood. She crumbled against the wall. Grabbing her arm, I pulled her over my shoulder, and then I saw it. A portion of chips on the ground. They looked tasty, flecked with red blood. A large screech tears through the house, the type that made Ernie Doors' ears bleed. What was that? He looked at me. That's just a yawn from the basement, I said. Ernie looked at his hands as he thought about the time his uncle used to take him down to the basement. It was just the two of them in the house. Ernie squeezed one hand with the other, just like his uncle taught him to do when it hurt. You make me sick, and he said to me, You're enjoying this. You know better than me. He gritted his teeth. You're a monster. Look what you did to me, Della said. She stood in the doorway, more matter than apparition. A surgical spike stuck out of her left rib cage, a patch of red surrounding it. I'm here because of you, Della said. No. Why did you bring her here? Ernie got up and paced the room, taking care not to go near Della. I did not turn her away. This is her story as much as yours, after all, I said, keeping my eye on the lanky brute. Sit down. Ernie glared at me, clenching his fist. I watched him. He turned and paced away. Della kept her eyes on him too. Looking at the carpet in front of his armchair, he sat down. Have you heard of a scallywag bunker before? Della said. She wiped her blood off her cheek with her bare arm. I hadn't until he took me down there. It was Churchill's idea. He thought the Germans will eventually invade Britain, so he got his forces to make concrete bunkers all over the place, so his soldiers could fight and hide without being detected. This monster turned a bunker into a state-of-the-art lab with his mate. He had all sorts of devices to conduct experiments on girls like me. But that wasn't the worst of it. It's what he did to me after I died. Stop, Ernie Doors said. You stop, you filthy animal, Della screamed. She sliced her hand across the air. Rip. Claw marks tore across Ernie's face. Ah! Then it all happened at once. Ernie lunged for Della. Grabbing her by the neck, he tossed her like a rag doll against the wall. Slam! The wall shuddered. Ernie, eyes wide, came at me. I simply stood and raised my arm to stop him. But an ethereal wisp slid round his waist and dragged him to the wall where Della was thrown. She turned. More apparition, less matter. Spikes jagged out from her form, piercing, tearing, ripping Ernie as she coiled her arms around him, twisting his torso. She forced him to look at her fierce form. It reminded me of an ancient goddess. A tongue, barbed, stretched out and lashed across his face, stripping the skin off. His eyeball fell to the floor. Ernie's breathing slowed. Della gazed at me with fiery eyes. A coil wafted out and reached between his legs. Slice. She tossed his genitals on the floor. Ernie, a torn heap, collapsed. Della's fiery form calmed. Apparition turned to matter as she became her goth self. Black mist spread from the wall towards Ernie, weaving into intricate patterns in front of me. "Take him to the sub-basement," I said. The mist bobbed and then stretched, coiling itself around Ernie Doors' arm. It pulled him away quietly. Within a second, he had disappeared down the corridor. Mouth open, Della watched. "We need to go upstairs," I said. She nodded. Raising my arm, I ushered her out the room, down a wooden corridor with oak doors on both sides. It appeared endless. I strode to the right. An ascending staircase lit up. We climbed a set of stairs. Della was tiring. It was like we were summiting Everest. But then, this part of the house does that to all those who climb here. We turned and climbed another set of stairs, eventually walking out into an opening. I escorted young Della out amongst the night. "Wow," she said. Della turned behind her and looked at the veil. A translucent barrier that separated a wide staircase. An amber flame burned on a candle placed near the wall on a tall stand at the foot of the stairs. Della looked up at the looming temple above her. It appeared to connect to the sky. "This way," I said. I guided her to the balcony that overlooked the front of the house. Amongst a blanket of stars, a deity waited, in the air, celestial. I looked up at her and placed my hands together and gave a gentle bow. She nodded. Della glowed. Suddenly, I saw a cylinder-shaped bulb at her heart. It has a glowing thin string protruding from the bulb. The string called up her spine and branched out like the nerve system in the human body, pulsing, throbbing, sending signals from the cylinder-shaped bulb through the strings to its end in her arms and legs. A thread protruding from the crown of her head linked her to the deity above. "Yank!" Whoosh. Della was gone, absorbed by the deity. She vanished as if she was never there. Della's journey was given a reprieve. The Divine Mother will look after her for a while before she progresses. Ernie's scream echoed all the way up here. He will remain with me for a while, as my guest. His room is in the sub-basement with the beings that live down there. As for you, meet me here at the house, 11 p.m. next Sunday, and I'll introduce you to my next guest. One piece of advice. There is always a bigger monster, and it will find you even after you die. Keep that in mind before you stray. Until next time, Godspeed.